Next up is Ecosystem Integrity Fund.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for joining us today.
Of course. Of
I'm
course.
going to
See some friendly faces in the crowd as well.
Yes.
Nice to see everyone.
Good deal. Okay, I'll just do a quick intro here. Jeff is a partner at Ecosystem Integrity Fund and has been a member of the EIF investment team since its inception. He leads fundraising and investor relations for the firm. His responsibilities also include investment deal sourcing, sector research, and strategy development, with a particular focus on transportation, renewable energy, grid modernization, and green chemistry. Jeff also works directly with EIF's portfolio companies on strategy, capital raising, and business development. And he serves as a board member for ZeroAvia, Shoreline, and SunVerge, and a board observer for Complete Solar and EV Connect. And I'm assuming all of those are portfolio companies of EIF, yes. Okay, so introduce us to the Ecosystem Integrity Fund. What's the mission? And even a small bit about what is a venture capital fund and why this space is critical to sustainable solutions.
Sure, and thank you for having me. And maybe I'll start there with
Great.
like what is venture capital, and then what do we do, because it's a little bit different. So in short, venture capital is a form of private equity, is what I would say, where essentially investors like yourselves entrust a fund manager like EIF or others here with their capital for a 10-year period of time, with the promise that we as the fund manager will go invest in the best and brightest companies that are in need of capital to help them grow and help them build out their solutions and push those solutions out into the world. We will also add our guidance, given our 15 years of experience helping these companies grow, towards one day growing them to a point where they are either valuable to acquire a large company, another company, usually a publicly traded company that would acquire them, or the company may get to a point where it can go public itself and become a public company. The end result from a financial standpoint being that we get back a multiple of value on what we had invested to begin with, and then we give that money back to you, the investors. Typically, because we have the privilege of hanging on to the money for a long period of time from our investors, you would expect a great return in return. So typically, we are companies that we invest in. When we exit, we're returning anywhere from 5 to 10 times the capital that we invested and giving that back to our investors. And at the fund level, you end up producing, and we have over the past 12, 13 years, producing 25% net IRRs and 3x multiples on the capital invested. And so that's the idea at its most basic form. What we do at EIF is essentially take that model and apply it to sustainability and climate. So we are focused on affecting impact in the areas of climate change and broader environmental sustainability. The thesis at our core is that essentially the largest industries within the economy have the greatest environmental impact. So whether it's energy production, the grid, transportation, agriculture, the way we power our buildings and our homes, those current systems, the way they run, are the reason why we're in trouble. It's the reason why there's climate change, and it's a reason why we have massive habitat and ecosystem destruction that is fundamentally unsustainable. So I think we and most people in the world, even most people in the United States, believe that all of those systems have to change. They essentially have to go from their old pathway of being extractive and dirty and destructive to a new pathway of being clean and regenerative and safe and sustainable. Those transitions are going to be hard, and they're going to take a lot of time and a lot of capital. What we really look for at the core of EIF strategy are early stage companies that are just getting started. They have a solution for an environmental problem, but really they have the capacity to help accelerate the transition of those large industries from fundamentally unsustainable and dirty to fundamentally sustainable and clean. And that's a big job, right? And so in reality, each of the companies that we invest in is a small enabling tool or technology that helps nudge that industry in the green direction and help the transition happen faster. At the end of the day, because we're doing that, or our companies are doing that, they are actually solving a real problem for those industries. You know, if you're in the energy industry, you know that you need to become sustainable or you're going to be out of business in a decade. Same thing in the car business, or same thing in the agriculture business. And so they look to us in many ways for essentially a solution to what they view as an existential problem, which is, hey, you know, we want to be around in a decade or 2 decades. We need to go green. We don't know how. So they look to our companies both as vendors of green technology, but also as acquisition targets. They buy our companies because they need to buy sustainability innovation, and they can't do it themselves. And that's essentially, we exist from a financial standpoint because large incumbent companies can't go green on their own, and they need our help. So I'll take a pause there, see if that was what you were looking for.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So there are a couple impact stories I wanted you to share. One about Bluon and 4 Days Clothing.
Okay, great. I'll start with Bluon. And in most of these cases, almost all of them, we start with the problem. You know, we're environmentalists first. And so we see an environmental problem. We say, that doesn't make any sense. Let's go fix that. One of the biggest problems that just doesn't make sense to us right now is air conditioning as a source of greenhouse gas emissions. So people need to cool themselves as climate change gets worse and worse and worse, gets hotter and hotter. More people are going to need air conditioning. Right now, air conditioning is responsible for approximately 10% of greenhouse gas emissions. So just cooling ourselves down, right? The thing is, it uses a lot of energy and electricity, which we pay for. And the refrigerant also, if it's released out into the environment, which is a waste and shouldn't be done, also is a major contributor to greenhouse gas. So we have been for a decade trying to figure out ways to reduce the amount of energy it takes to cool down a space, fundamentally, right? And this should be in everyone's best interest. If you do that, you reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions produced by creating the electricity to power the air conditioner, and you save the end consumer money. Everyone wins, right? In our pursuit of that, we found a company, Bluon, that had developed a novel refrigerant that just by switching the refrigerant out or recharging, once the refrigerant's gone in an old air conditioner, recharging it with the Bluon refrigerant, you can save 25% off your electricity bill. So it costs very little to buy this refrigerant. And then all of a sudden you're using 25% less electricity. So if every air conditioner in the world did that, we'd go from air conditioning being 10% of greenhouse gas emissions to 7.5%. That's a big deal. There are very few easy fixes that get you that kind of a greenhouse gas reduction and save you money at the same time and are easy to implement. So it was something that worked well within the system and was just a great innovation. It turned out along the way also that in order to sell the stuff, the company had to engage really closely with the actual HVAC technicians, who essentially had been, these are very hardworking people working on the roofs of commercial buildings, and they had been ignored as essentially playing a really important role in climate transition, right? Because these are the people who can make sure that HVAC equipment is running efficiently. A mistuned air conditioner, commercial air conditioner can waste 10 or 20% of energy just because it's not tuned correctly. So the company engaged really closely with them to help push this out into the world. And now half of the HVAC techs in the United States are actually on the Bluon platform. It's an app on your iPhone. They buy the refrigerant through that app, but we also push at them essentially tools and instructions for tuning air conditioners. So not just bringing down the energy use through a better refrigerant, but teaching them how to make air conditioners more efficient just by tuning them correctly. So maybe getting 35% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from air conditioners. And the company is growing really well. They had about $1 million in revenue. It was about 4 years ago. Now they'll do probably 25 million of revenue this year. They have a number of strategic air conditioning companies that have invested and are going to now try to push that solution out into the world. So super excited about the potential there with Bluon. Real quickly on 4 Days. 4 Days is in a totally different industry. The problem we were looking to fix there was waste in the apparel industry. A fact that always just makes me angry is that the average American throws out or creates 85 pounds of textile waste every year, about half through actually throwing out clothing and shoes, and the other half in when you buy clothing, there's a bunch of cuttings that get thrown away. And so just in the act of buying a new piece of clothes, you're creating essentially the same or twice as much waste on the cutting floor. And it's kind of a nasty industry. There's a lot of water pollution and mistreatment of workers that I think we've all known about. So the idea was, okay, we're throwing all this clothing out. Why aren't we recycling it? Well, we're not recycling it because it's just hard and expensive to recycle. It's not that these pieces of clothing can't be recycled. It's just that the best thing you think you can do is take it to Goodwill. Goodwill actually just high grades it, takes the 10% of stuff that's the best, and then just throw the rest away. Because actually sorting it into the different components so that it can be recycled properly was a really hard problem to solve until now. 4days came along and they created a platform that's essentially like an automated and inexpensive sorting and recycling platform. And then they created a cool mechanism whereby they incentivized people who buy clothing to return all of their old clothing to 4days. And so 4days has diverted from landfills to recycling over 1 million pounds of clothes just in the last 2 years. And it's something that the whole industry recognizes. Oh, if we can do that, we want to do that because people want to buy sustainable clothing and they want to recycle clothing and they had no way to do it until now. And so what's interesting is, in addition to just doing it with their own clothing line, there are 150 brands now that are using 4days in their recycling platform as the way to get old clothes back from consumers and get them properly recycled so that we stop throwing this stuff into landfills. And so we're super excited about the pathway there. From a financial standpoint, that's another company, kind of like Bluon, but even faster. We invested 1.5 years ago. The company had $1.5 million of revenue, and they've grown to 13-14 million of trailing at this point. And they're just growing like a weed. So it is quickly becoming the platform by which the apparel industry recycles its clothing.
Powerful. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, just real quick, because we're running a little short, we want to get into the breakout rooms, but could you share something about why the investment flow into Ecosystem Integrity Fund matters?
Yeah, I think, we think about that a lot. We want to matter as much as possible. And we try to be the highest leverage form of capital for accelerating this transition of large, dirty industries. We're actually not managing that much money, right? Like we're managing hundreds of millions of dollars, but we're having massive impact on big industries that want to change, but don't know how. So it's a really efficient use of money if you're trying to green these industries.
Yeah, well said. Thanks so much.